Podcast with John Impemba and Andrew Cooper.
What is going on, everybody? John Impemba here with Andrew Cooper. Welcome into the Quick Out Fantasy Football Show. NFL Week 3 is upon us, Coop, my friend. How are we doing?
Fantastic, man. This is the best for me because I'm a bit of a nerd. So I like when we have more stats. 1 week, fine. 2 weeks, now we can get some trends going. Now we can get some predictions going. I mean, it's still a very small sample size, but it's double the sample size we had last week, John. So we can start figuring things out and doing what we do. Real NFL fans, they care about what happened last week. We care about what happens next week.
We can start seeing what was real, what was not real after week 1. As you mentioned, some trends, maybe find some defensive weaknesses, some players that we thought maybe actually be better than we expected, some players that might be worse than we expected, some players that aren't being used as we expected here through the first couple of weeks of the season here. And we have the chat flowing right now, Coop. We actually got the chat on screen here, a little new integration for us here on the show. Let you guys know that we are here to interact with you. We got a couple of Twitch friends in here, homie Frank and Sean, and then Tommy getting the game says, you're going to answer all the questions. We are. We're going to answer your questions here during the show. If you have a question about a specific player or game, we're going to go game by game breakdown. That's what we do. We get you in and out of here in an hour. We give you all the information you need to know about each matchup that's going to happen this week. So if you have a question for a specific game, hold that for us here. We're going to certainly answer them when we get to those games. If you want to start flowing that chat in there, we're certainly more than happy to get it going yet. If you're not yet already a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, now's your time to do it. We got a 7-day free trial. You can scan the QR code here on the screen and become a member of the Fantasy Alarm family today. Gets all of our access to all of our premium content, Discord, playbooks, DFS, and seasonal. So join the family today. Go to fantasy.com/win or scan the QR code here on the screen to get involved with what's going on here. Fatty McFats from the old Discord room. I think he won an entry into the RT Sports giveaway that we did. So
how's that going, Fatty? How's the team looking 2 weeks in? Yeah, let us know how the team's going. You're repping the Fantasy Alarm. My team in the FFPC, the $350 buy-in, 2-0, John, but I just lost Nick Chubb. So
yeah, that is tough. The Nick Chubb experience is not a good one. Let's just kick it off here. We'll kick it off with injuries and news. Talk to me about Nick Chubb, and we obviously have some questions already rolling in here. Matt Claps wants to know about Ford. Talk to me, man. Thoughts on the whole Browns situation? They signed Kareem Hunt today.
Right. And I wrote about this in the article I did where I said, the options are guys like Kareem Hunt. If there's bad blood there, then Leonard Fournette, or they could trade for Cam Akers, or they could sign a nobody. If you were rooting for Jerome Ford, you were hoping for that nobody. The reason being, Kareem Hunt kind of had issues with the team and with his usage. He asked for a trade, right? As a free agent, if this guy was disgruntled with the team and he was worried about playing time and that's what he cared about, why would he sign to come back to this team if they didn't essentially tell him that he was going to play in those discussions? So him coming back, having the deal that's worth up to $4 million, and again, up to with the incentives also kind of tells us that he's going to play. Like with these incentive-laden contracts, Kareem Hunt would be furious if they give him a contract that, he needed to play to get the money and then they didn't let him play. So we know Kareem Hunt's going to play. It's probably going to be a split, but Jerome Ford, I think, is still the guy. He's still the early down Nick Chubb guy, but now it goes back to last year where it's, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
So. Yeah, and there's also less of a skill gap here. I mean, we have the, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, you were going to play Chubb over him. But if Jerome Ford doesn't get going, there's a conceivable reason to see that you could see Kareem Hunt overtake him as a starting back here if Hunt shows to be the better back here eventually. So this might not be a great spot for him. They are going up against Tennessee this week. Tennessee has had a really good run defense over the first 2 weeks. Everybody's waiver wire darling last week, and Joshua Kelly ran into Tennessee and didn't do anything. And now everybody blew all of their fab money on Jerome Ford, who's now going into a matchup against Tennessee. I would temper my expectations this week for Jerome Ford going up against that Titans run defense.
John, how many questions on Sunday morning? How many Joshua Kelly questions did we say not Joshua Kelly?
A ton.
And it wasn't even just that Joshua Kelly's not that good, which he's not, but that defense with Jeffrey Simmons and those goons, they are just face rippers, man. Like once again, I think it's going on almost a full calendar year now that this team has not let up more than 66 yards rushing. So
Right.
it's a dangerous spot. And that's what's so hard about these handcuff running backs. And we'll talk about a few of them today, where not only do you need the starter to get hurt, and not only do you need the handcuff to actually get the full job, but now you're just back into the world of playing matchups, because a few of these guys, even though they have the full job, we look at the matchup and we're like, oh man, this is actually a bad spot to start this game. So for you to actually get a handcuff where the starter gets hurt and then the matchups actually work enough for you to start the guy, it's really it's a tough needle to thread. That's why we prefer standalone players to pure handcuffs. Just to clear the deck real quick, John, we've got a lot of guys we want to talk about, but why don't we just talk about them within the context of the games, right? What I want to do here is let's clear the deck on questions. Let's talk about Better Cast real quick, and then we'll get into the games. You guys in the chat, do us a favor. We want to talk about these games. We want to answer your questions. If you hang out with us, when we get to a game that involves one of your players, if you ask it right then, we will answer it right then. What we do is we go through the chat, check out all the messages, and when we get to a player that involves a game that involves your player, like for instance, Darren Waller and Darius Goddard and Justice Hill, there's a question there. The moment we get to one of those players, we're going to bring that up. Try and just time it like that. We're going to hit it just like that. So there you go. Real quick. Homie Frank said, I traded Swift and Evans for Jamar Chase. Did I win? Yes, I see you. What do you think, John?
I traded Swift and Evans for Jamar Chase. I mean, right now, no. But, moving forward, you're assuming that Chase will look like the guy that went number 2 overall in drafts. Mike Evans is looking like a guy that's been taken among the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy football for the last decade at this point. And then DeAndre Swift, hey, guess what? He's healthy. They let him actually utilize him last week, and he ran all over Minnesota. So, for 2 weeks, it doesn't look great, but it's definitely a sell high potentially.
If you have, the thing is, depending on who your running backs are, like if you have good running backs and you weren't probably going to start Swift anyway, then you just got an upgrade. The thing about Mike Evans is that he's going to have good games. He always does, but he also disappears when he plays. Like this week, Darius Slay. You probably have to start him, but like Darius Slay is a terrible matchup for him. It's probably gonna be
He's got like 6 feet on Darius Slay, but I would agree with you.
Even then, dude. Even then, like Marshawn Lattimore, like 2 times a year. I mean, he gets kicked out of those games. He doesn't even play, right? They don't even play. He gets ejected when he plays Marshawn Lattimore. And there's a bunch of those situations where they just say, you know what? We'll just throw to Godwin today. So I do like Mike Evans. I like him best in best ball, though.
Is that Kenneth Walker and Bijan Robinson as his running back? So I'm fine. I'm fine moving Swift for sure.
You're good, dog.
Let's get to some of these other ones here. Matt Klaus want to know what we were doing with Rashad White, DeAndre, or where was the question that he had there? Would you start Rashad White or Jerome Ford this week? White against the Eagles isn't great, but Ford against the Titans.
Rashad White or Jerome Ford? I would. It's White against the Titans, right?
It's White against the Eagles.
I would just start White against the Eagles, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna go White against the Eagles over Ford versus the Titans for me here.
Yeah,
for sure. Fatty want to know Darren Waller. Give Darren Waller, get Dallas Goedert and Justice Hill. Justice Hill doesn't do anything for me, so this would be a Waller for Goddard trade, and I think I'd rather Waller at this point.
Goddard is a handcuff plus player where he has some standalone value. You can throw him in there when he's, not every week is going to be him getting shut down by Kyle Duggar like week 1, but he doesn't have true difference making upside unless one of those wide receivers gets hurt. Like you knew what you signed up for if you read all the articles that we wrote this year on that exact topic, right? Same with a guy like George Kittle. So I got Dallas Goedert. He's not an end zone threat. He only has 8 end zone targets over the last 3 years total, and he has 0 this year. He has 1 red zone target that he didn't catch this season. So Dallas Goedert is what we thought he was. If one of Devonta Smith and AJ Brown get hurt, I personally will be trading for Dallas Goedert if those guys are out for the season. But right now, just not interested, man. What's the me and John were talking about before the show, maybe offensive statement, but what exactly is the difference between Dallas Goedert and Cade Otton right now? Right? It's like the clear third target behind 2 really good wide receivers. I don't know.
I would agree with you here. We're trying to clear the deck, but we keep getting a billion more questions. So let's do rapid fire here, Coop.
Yes.
Would you Evans or Pittman this week for a start?
Pittman.
Would you trade Kyron Williams for Joe Mixon? He's got CMC already. It's his RB1.
Immediately.
Selling high on Kyron Williams there?
I'm selling, dude. Kyron Williams is fine, but like Joe Mixon has been highly startable already when this team's been bad, and I expect them to be better.
Okay. Would you trade Amon-Ra St. Brown and ETN for Chase and Miles Sanders?
Oh, that's kind of tough. I'm a big Miles Sanders guy, and I've never really been. I mean, Amon Ross St. Brown, he's good, great player, but he's got the turf toe going right now. I think the only reason you do that trade is if you're worried about the turf toe. I saw from Deepak. I don't want to butcher his name, but so one of the Twitter doctors, Chona, I believe it was, said that he's playing with a. They said that he's playing with some this like metal thing in his shoe, which according to that doctor tells us straight up it's turf toe, which is a huge problem, dude. It really truly is huge. Careers have been ended by this ailment. I mean, I watched LaDainian Tomlinson go from the best player all time to just a guy that couldn't play from week to week. I watched Sean Alexander go from a guy that was scoring 25 touchdowns a year to not being able to play. So, now there's better treatments and stuff, but for the short term, you got to be careful.
Other question that we got here, K9, is that Kenneth Walker? Is K9? Is that
yeah.
Is he dependable RB2 for sure? Definitely. Awesome. The red zone work's been great for him. And then Daniel wants to know, would you trade Ramondre and Cup for Ekeler and Debo? So you have an injured Ekeler and Debo Samuels for Ramondre and an injured Cup.
I'm real scared about Cup. The fact that he went to go see some crazy specialist, and now they're saying that it could be potentially a genetic issue, is what I'm hearing, John. Which, anytime I start hearing stuff like that, where they're trying to diagnose what a mysterious issue is, I just want to get away from that. So I would go with Ekeler and Debo are like kind of two halves of the same type of guy, right? Mm-hmm. Like the RB that catches passes and the wide receiver that runs the football. Those are two very fun players.
Yeah, I would agree with you. All right, let's get into this game preview here. Again, we'll answer your questions, guys, as we hit them, if you throw them in there when we get to these games. But, Coop, Thursday night football matchup, we got on tap Giants, 49ers. Saquon Barkley, obviously the injury news we're waiting for. They miraculously said they're not willing to 100% rule him out yet. I saw Matt Breida go for $80 in a league that had a $100 budget this morning, which felt aggressive since they didn't rule Saquon out for the year. They maybe ruled him out for a game or two. How startable is Breida for you against the 49ers, assuming Barkley is out? And what's your overall takeaway in this matchup here?
I mean, I like Breida in general. Like, we've seen him come in, even when last year Barkley tweaked his shoulder a little bit, came out for one drive, and Breida took the entire drive, took it right down the field and scored a touchdown. So, I do like Breida. It's just in this particular matchup, once again, this is the handcuff game. The very first one on the slate is the exact example where it's like, you've been stashing this player just in case this happens, and now you probably shouldn't start him, right? It's just like the handcuff game is so difficult to win unless you get a guy that's out for the year. But even then, look at Jerome Ford. Like, you stashed him, you did everything right, and then the team went out and they signed another player that's going to get the most important part of the work, which is probably catching the passes. So congratulations.
I'll tell you, with the Jerome Ford thing, I was pleasantly surprised to see how much of him I actually had in underdog. I didn't think I had any. I didn't think I drafted that guy anywhere, and he ended up being like 20% of my roster. So
I was drafting a bunch because Britt Flynn, because normally in that situation, I would take Gus Edwards every time. Like, I just like, he's a guy I've always liked. But Britt Flynn just kind of earwormed me into taking Jerome Ford. So I do have a bunch of him too. And which is great in best ball and underdog, but it's not like you just got Nick Chubb for free.
Right.
Like, a lot of people thought that was the case, and clearly it's not.
We have what is this? To the dirt, maybe whatever. A Giants receiver not named Waller will score 15 points in PPR. Let's talk about Jalen Hyatt for a second, because Jalen Hyatt was the biggest playmaker on the field. It felt like, unfortunately, he only played 21% of the snaps, a decrease from his week 1 snap count where he played 36%. Yet he had 2 catches for 89 yards. You were big on him. He was the Volknikov winner in college, and to me, I was taking a lot of Jalen Hyatt at drafts at the end because I didn't feel like there was really a skill separation gap at that wide receiver position with New York. Why they won't play him more, I don't understand. But maybe last week, hopefully, sparked something for Dayball to get him on the field a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I figured out what our Twitch friend's name is. I think it's Toothed Dirk, as in a Dirk with teeth. I believe. Unless it's Tooth Head Dirk, which would be even funnier. But I think it's Tooth Dirk. Let me know. Dirk, let us know what the deal is here.
And also appreciate you there, man. I love our Twitch friends. Love our
Twitch gang, dude. Let me get the Twitch shades on for the gang, baby. So yeah, I mean, like Jalen Hyatt, if he were like, I'm adding him because I think that when you look around, guys like Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, but Isaiah Hodgins is a different player because he's a split end. He's more battling with Waller for those type touches, but I think that Jalen Hyatt is going to overtake Darius Slayton for that job. And then everybody else is going to battle for those slot snaps, the Paris Campbells and the Wan'Dale Robinsons of the world. So I think that all Jalen Hyatt needs to do, is be better than Darius Slayton. And I think that if he has one more game like yesterday, it's not going to be it's not going to be a question anymore.
Yeah.
We've seen Darius Slayton go on the back burner already in previous, iterations of this offense. So I don't think it's going to be that hard. So I'm in on it, man. With the 49ers on the other side of the ball here, CMC's a superstar. Any update on Brandon Ayuk in the shoulder?
I didn't practice today from what I think was the most recent update. I was actually just trying to scroll through and see what we got there. 90,000 tweets and retweets here, but I don't think I saw that he was practicing today. I'll keep if I can find it. The CMC thing is funny because when he got traded to San Francisco, there was an article that was written that said CMC going to San Francisco is going to be bad for fantasy football. It's been the RB1 in fantasy basically since he went to San Francisco. So not correct there.
He's amazing. Yeah,
he did let me down big time, Coop, last week in the underdog streets there with their contest.
Right.
I had CMC. He had only 30 yards in the second half. Cost me a big chunk of change there, but gotta run him out against the Giants for sure. James Conner scored last week, so
exactly. And to wrap this one up, George Kittle. Like, here's the thing with George Kittle. We wrote 5,000 words on why we weren't taking George Kittle at ADP, but why you, if you wanted to, could. And you, being the person that drafted George Kittle, you know who he is. He's a guy that can break off big chunk plays at any time, runs a 4.5 40. The only tight end in the league that has multiple 70-yard touchdowns. He has more 40-yard plays than any other tight end. And he's also a red zone threat. On a per-game basis, he had more end zone targets than any other tight end last year. So you know what you signed yourself up for. Obviously, you're not surprised that George Kittle, through 2 games, is the tight end 27. But he's going to come out and have a 2-touchdown game. He's going to come out and have a game where he has like a 50-yard play. And then he's going to go back up and be tight end like 6 or 7 within a couple weeks. So you knew what you signed yourself up for. I didn't want to be a part of that unless it was best ball. But if you have George Kittle, don't panic just yet because that game is going to come and it might even come right now.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk's situation, according to John Lynch, is very fluid and he'll be a game time decision. So you'll have to wait and find out. Don't think there's anybody you'd be playing instead of Ayuk as like a handcuff, but that's where we're at.
All right, next game.
Situation.
1 o'clock games, full slate.
Yeah, Colts and Ravens. Ravens given 8 points here. Minshew Mania.
Woo! Let's go, dude. Say what you will. It's fun when that guy's out there. I hope he scores a touchdown. I hope they win because when this guy does win, he makes an effort to shake, give a high five to every single fan that's there.
Yeah.
If you hold a flag down there, he'll grab it and do something weird with it. You know what I mean? Like Minshew's that dude. So I do hope they win. It is Baltimore. So it is going to be in Baltimore. So
in Baltimore. So tough matchup there. Kylan Granton's looked good through 2 weeks, found the end zone last week. Gardner Minshew brings a more traditional passing offense to Indy. So you got to at least bump up the receivers now in this offense.
Yeah. So I'm excited. So Michael Pittman plays virtually every snap. Last year, he led all wide receivers in snap share, but Alec Pierce also played every snap this week. Josh Downs is the odd man out who comes out of the game in 2 wide sets, but he's also the slot guy. So it's kind of easier to get him targets underneath. The Alec Pierce versus Josh Downs question. If they were to take Josh Downs and use him like Cooper Kupp or Chris Godwin, where he's a full-time guy that plays slot in 3 wide, but stays on the field for 2 wide, it would be absolutely wheels up for Josh Downs, but we're just not there yet. So right now, I still, on a weekly basis, would rank Alec Pierce ahead, especially with a quarterback now that probably is, I hate to say it, but at this very moment, Gardner Minshew is better at throwing the football than Anthony Richardson. Would that not be accurate?
Yeah.
Maybe not better at
for fantasy. It's exciting. It's 17 fantasy points in like 4 minutes of work last week. So,
right.
The running value always going to trump the throwing value. Ravens side of things, this is a fantastic spot for the Ravens offense. Colts defense has been terrible. They got lit up by Trevor Lawrence, got lit up by Stroud last week here. I mean, Flowers and Andrews should just have a field day against this Indy defense, in my opinion.
Bingo. Yeah. And again, folks in the chat, make sure you get your questions in when we're talking about the particular games. We're going to try and take them when you say them, put them on the back burner for those games, but we want to hit the game slate and hit your questions. So like if you have a Justice Hill question now, if you have a Rashad Bateman question now, now's the time, and get that in now, and then we'll answer it. So, and then same for other ones. If you have one and you're like, okay, I have a question on the Bengals. The moment we start talking about the Bengals, throw it in the chat and we'll get to it.
We'll do our best at the end of the show also to recap any questions we might have missed before we get out of here. But Titans, Browns given 3 here. Treylon, Tajay Spears, 2 guys that people were excited about and then not excited about, obviously. Treylon had a big catch last week, but where are we now in this matchup? We've talked enough Browns here, but talk about the Titans.
Yeah. So real quick, we have a question on this game. Jeb Armstrong in the chat says, should I trade Alvin Kamara and Jerome Ford for Diggs? My other wide receivers are Devontae Adams-Olave. My other RBs are Monty, Kyron Williams, and Najee Ramondre Stevenson. I would.
I don't think you need Diggs, but if you start 2 wide receivers in a flex, I guess you have Adams, Olave, and Diggs playing every week, and then you're playing Kyrie Williams and Ramondre Stevenson, I would guess. So I don't need it. But you're trading 2 starting running backs for Diggs. So.
If it's a 2 wide receiver league, I'm just going to keep Kamara. If it's one where you start 3 wide receivers, then I would do the trade. That's the way I look at that, man.
Jamal Williams is hurt, so it's hard to know. Rex want to know about Zach Moss here. We just went through that, so I'll hit it quickly. 2 actually questions on Zach Moss. Preston wants to know Miles Sanders for Zach Moss, and then Rex wants to know, would you start Zach Moss against the Ravens? Zach Moss played every snap last week, so you have to play him.
I would rather, you got to play Zach Moss this week, but I would rather have Miles Sanders the rest of season because Jonathan Taylor's coming back. Zach Moss might turn into a straight up nothing in 2 weeks.
Don't be getting rid of Zach Moss until you know what Jonathan Taylor's doing, because Jonathan Taylor might come back and play for another team. So
and this is if you added Zach Moss this week and you don't have a spot to start him in your lineup, then this is a lesson for the future, which is that if there's a expiring asset, which we consider Zach Moss to be, don't spend a bunch of fab on him unless you're going to use him this week or next week, right? Yeah. Because what are you going to do? Put him on the bench this week, and then if he goes off again, then you start him next week, and then when Jonathan Taylor's back, then it's over, so try to think about, what your game plan is when you're adding, who you're not. That's why for me, at certain spots, I was just adding Roschon Johnson because I'm like, all right, give me the longest term upside instead of some of these perhaps temporary assets. But so in this game, Treylon Burks, I can't drop Treylon Burks or DeAndre Hopkins right now. I'm just holding on to those guys. Chig Okonkwo is a guy that if you need the roster spot, you might be able to drop him. He needs this team cannot sustain 3 fantasy relevant assets. He needs an injury to DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, even a Treylon Burks injury might not help him at this point.
Right.
He needs an injury to one of those 2 players at the very least. So if you have to drop Chig, you have to. In Dynasty, keep him because we like his profile. We like the upside. Obviously, Hopkins is not going to be playing for 2. I mean, who knows with guys like that? But at some point he's going to have his opportunity. But right now he's stuck. On the Brown side, Deshaun Watson, couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Kareem Hunt is now on the team, as we talked about. Njoku, for me, I moved him down and out. I was hoping he would be a top 2 target on the team. He's clearly not. He's been he blocked on fewer pass plays this week, but just wasn't involved. It's really hard to trust a guy like that.
I'll say that this is a show me week for them because the Titans have one of the worst pass defenses in football. Seeing them now get beat up in both weeks that they've played. Even Derek Carr threw for 300 yards against them. Justin Herbert threw for 300 yards against them. So if the Browns can go out there and throw on Tennessee, then maybe you'll see some of the value come back for these pass catchers there. Their pass rush is not nearly as threatening as what Watson had to deal with going up against the Steelers last week. So
yeah, and this is my exact thoughts on Treylon Burks. If you don't want to drop him, you just you don't want to drop him in a keeper league, but you can't put him in your lineup. So you have the right feeling. Give him one more week. But you're right, John. There's a few guys that it's put up or shut up week, and David Njoku definitely won.
Yep, right? I agree with you. We do have a question pertaining to Gibbs. We're on the Falcons Lions here. So Kyle Pitts, Desmond Ridder, Mac Hollins, all of them fine. Drake London fine. If you have them, you're not going to do much. Hollins, I'm not looking to pick up. Ritter shouldn't be starting for you anyways, but
No.
Bijan is an absolute monster.
So
and
good.
Algier got the carries again. So both of those guys are in play for you.
Yeah. This is just like Njoku. This is definitely, for me, a prove-it game for Kyle Pitts. He's going up against the Lions, which should force this team to throw a little bit. They just lost CJ Gardner-Johnson, possibly for the year, the strong safety for the Lions. Like, if Kyle Pitts can't get it done this week, then you absolutely cannot trust this guy again, and he might actually be droppable. Now, I'm willing in this game to start Pitts where I have him. I'm also willing to bet the over where I'm seeing Desmond Ritter set at like 190 yards. I just don't think you can go and play this Lions team and just run it all day long on them. I don't think it's a good strategy. I don't think it's going to work. And I think that because the Lions are going to score on the Falcons, they're going to have to throw. So on that side of the ball, I'm in. On the other side of the ball, we have Sam Laporta, where you're starting him where you have him. I mean, the guys, his usage has gotten better from week 1 to 2. The targets are there. So you got to get him going. John, I got to give you a shout out, dude. You had Josh Reynolds in the DFS dartboard, right?
Yeah, I was as high as Josh Reynolds as anybody could be. I included him in my TikTok video about waiver wire ads, my value video last week as a contrarian play. He was in the dartboard for DFS. Everything just lined up. He's playing the snaps. He's getting the targets. He's getting the looks. And last week he had 2 touchdowns. And now, if Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be limited with this turf toe, it's an even bigger boost for him to be part of this offense. I don't see him just going away. Even if Jameson Williams comes back here, what's the role for Jameson Williams? The guy has played barely any actual NFL football. So they're going to stick him out there for 90% of the snaps right away? I don't think so. So I think Reynolds is really good here.
Jameson Williams is a high risk, high reward play, but yeah, I mean, he could end up just being a field stretcher, which would be a shame considering what this team spent to get him.
To get on the field for them to trust him, though. So
it's not like he's hurt; he's suspended. Okay? Well, he was hurt last year.
No, he was hurt during preseason.
Yeah, well, it's a hamstring, but he's got 6 weeks mandatory to recover.
I'm just saying, this is a guy that's been hurt a lot already in his career, and then suspended. So we'll see.
It sounds like a lot of Josh Reynolds fantasy wishing to me, John.
It's not wishing. He's been productive. He was productive last year, too.
I'm giving you a hard time, dude. Josh, you were right about Josh Reynolds, all right?
I appreciate that.
The RB split here, very disheartening to see Craig Reynolds come off the bench and immediately get carries. I truly hope they aren't basically using Craig Reynolds and Bam Knight to play the David Montgomery role, but we all suspect that might be true, John. Still a boost for Jahmyr Gibbs, though, because I think no matter what, he's going to get a little bit more, at least a little bit more.
I would agree with you. I'm buying a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs this week.
Yes.
So I'm playing him where he goes here. We did have a question about selling high on Jahmyr Gibbs or a list: Gibbs, Kyren, Stevenson, Algier, Moss, JT, McKinnon. Should you package and sell high for Mixon? I'm not selling like Gibbs. We talked about selling Kyren potentially. And that's a lot for Mixon. You can sell Algier, Moss. Those guys are
definitely selling Moss. I doubt you're going to be able to sell Moss to somebody though, that without selling JT. I mean, in McKinnon, if you could do, I mean, I doubt anyone would take this, but if you could do like Algier, say, hey, here you can have Algier, Moss, and McKinnon, take them all and give me Mixon. If that person's really struggling and desperate and bad at fantasy, maybe they would take that. But I would just say, hey, you know what? Take whoever you want out of Kyren, Algier, Moss, and McKinnon. Take all 4. And then your running backs are Gibbs, Mixon, Stevenson, and Jonathan Taylor. That would be just fine. So yeah, give the guy, see if the guy will say, take whoever you want out of these 4, you can have them all and see what the guy says, right?
Yeah. Just as we talked about 2 of these guys already, Brad here, where is this question? There it is. Mentioned if Aaron Jones is sitting, Moss, Swift, and Breida. We've talked Moss and Breida already. We'll get the Swift here. I would probably play Swift over the other 2, though.
Oh man, Moss got every single touch, every one.
Swift.
Yeah, that's true.
And listen, unless Gainwell is back, but we haven't seen him practicing yet. So, Swift was electric. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. So, and for everybody who talks about obviously the Jalen Hurts and the rushing and the touchdowns, yes. But Miles Sanders last year had 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. So he can score too. So I'm going Swift here.
Here's a good comment. Jeff Okudah revenge game, John. Yeah. I mean, maybe. I've seen Jeff Okudah when he feels like it. He can come out and shut guys down.
Yeah, who's he shutting down? I guess that's the question.
He took Zay Jones out behind the woodshed, dude.
Are you starting Kyren or Gibbs this week? Matt Merckx wants to know.
Gibbs, dude.
Gibbs. I agree with you. All right, Saints Packers here. Saints Packers at home giving 42 game total here. I'm going to say it right now. I think that what we've seen out of Jordan Love has been an aberration of matchups. I think that comes to an end here against the Saints.
Ooh, I think you might be
He's
right.
completing 55% of his passes in each of the 2 games. He just happens to also be throwing for touchdowns. The Saints are a much better defense than Atlanta and Chicago. So I don't see that happening here this week.
Marshawn Lattimore, Demario Davis. They got the Tyrann Mathieu. I mean,
the only benefit he'll have is that the Saints are on the road, but the Saints are they're a very good team. There was a stat someone said
it's still nice in Green Bay. It's like nice out.
The Saints defense hasn't allowed more than 20 points or something like that in like a year. So they're
a problem. They're a problem. And it's not a good matchup for Luke Musgrave. So he's still a stash. I like stashing him, but like we're waiting for the right spot. This is not it. AJ Dillon, also a tough start. I mean, if you had to start one of Jaden Reed or Romeo Doubs, John, who would you go with?
Oh, man. I mean, I still feel like Doubs, but Reed is obviously a guy they took in the second round, and he made an impact, as an explosive playmaker in that offense. So it all but snap share to me. What was Reed's snap count last week?
It was Romeo Doubs still played more. Jaden Reed operates primarily out of the slot, so he comes out for the 2 wide receiver sets.
Yeah, if Christian Watson ever comes back in the field, I want to know how that breakdown happens here. We do have a question.
Here's what happens.
We'll touch on that.
Tell you real quick. Here's what happens. Christian Watson is the split end, and Romeo Doubs is the flanker, and Jaden Reed is the slot, and Dontavian Wicks and Samari Torre just go away completely. Okay. So I think you're going to see Romeo Doubs and Watson playing the full snap share, and Jaden Reed kind of in the Tyler Boyd role, but a more explosive Tyler Boyd. So
listen, where they draft equity, right? A conversation that a lot of fantasy people like to have that means ultimately nothing most of the time in real football. Like you would think Reed would play over Doubs at some point. So
right. So if that's what you're hoping. So like Jaden Reed, the trajectory that would equal big upside for him would be the one of Chris. So like Chris Godwin, it took him a couple years, right, to go from being just a slot guy to being the slot guy that stays out for 2 wide sets. The sooner that happens, the sooner he can have true upside. Jackson Smith and Jigba is still dealing with the same thing behind Lockett and Evans. So that's the trajectory. The day that happens, in my snap count article that I do every single Wednesday coming out this afternoon, I will tell you. But as of right now, it has not happened.
Question on Watson here. Would you trade Trevor Lawrence for Watson when I already have Herbert? I don't trade for injured players. So my question, even though I don't know why you have Lawrence and Herbert if it's not a super flex league, I am not trading for an injured wide receiver. So no, thank you.
I'm doing it. If you have two quarterbacks, all right. Ask every single player. I know people hate that, but in the group chat, throw out anybody want Trevor Lawrence?
Do not trade Trevor Lawrence for a guy who hasn't seen the field yet because he has a soft tissue injury. Please do not do it. Just don't do it. He had soft tissue injuries last year. He already has soft tissue injuries this year. You're just giving Trevor Lawrence away to a guy who needs a quarterback. Get a healthy wide receiver on your team if you need one.
You know what would really be great is if you could hold off on trading Trevor Lawrence for like a couple more weeks, because the Chargers have the very first bye week of any team. It's like week 5. So if you could just start Trevor Lawrence week 5, and then you have the narrative. People love a good narrative where you can say, hey, I don't need Trevor Lawrence anymore. He's on the trade block.
Sure.
Because people are always skeptical of you when you offer trade.
I'm not opposed to trading him. I just don't want to trade him for a hurt wide receiver.
So I would see if you could get away with starting Lawrence week 5 and then trade him.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Let's move on to Texans versus Jaguars here. Jacksonville's given 9.5, which is a big number for a team that hasn't really looked great. And then the Texans here. We like the Texans wide receivers are surprising because Houston's just playing from behind a lot. So they have to throw a lot, and you're getting ridiculous value out of Nico Collins, Robert Woods. And then last week, Tank Dell pops 10 targets, has a touchdown. Stroud threw for 300 and ridiculous number of yards, right? Like, are we buying Houston here to keep this one competitive, or does Jacksonville bounce back after a really bad showing against KC?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go full Jim Cramer here,
sure,
and give you the Nico Collins. He's two. There's 3 options. There's buy, hold, and sell. He is not a buy, and the reason he's not a buy is because this team. They've dropped back an unsustainable number of times so far. To put in perspective, the Houston Texans have dropped back 109 times in 2 games. The Las Vegas Raiders have dropped back 54 times. So literally double what this other team's done in 2 games. It's not sustainable. It's not going to hold. So you don't want to buy Nico Collins. That said, Nico Collins doesn't need to get 10 targets a game. He doesn't need a million dropbacks. So you're either holding him because he should be a viable player. He's probably not going to be wide receiver 6 or whatever he is right now, but he should be a viable player, or you're selling him because you recognize the pattern and you want to sell out. I mean, like, look at the Raiders, for instance. If you were able to package Nico Collins in something to get Devontae Adams and take advantage of the 2 disparities there, then that would be amazing. I don't think the Devontae Adams owner would do it, but these are the things we got to take advantage of, the trends we got to take advantage of. And a buddy of ours, Zach Hillenbrandt, shout out, to the Medford crew, just did a really good study on that exact thing that I'm hoping he's going to post later that we can retweet out there, that shows, why the fantasy points for certain guys are probably inflated based on game scripts.
Right. So any other thoughts here? I mean, Zay Jones is hurt day to day. Who does that impact for you on Jacksonville?
Obviously Christian Kirk. So what's really annoying, the coach came out and said it's going to be game script dependent, and Christian Kirk versus zone could do better.
Christian Kirk versus man. He becomes a god, right?
So and then Zay Jones versus zone, it's kind of a nightmare. We don't want that. It doesn't affect Calvin Ridley. It doesn't affect Evan Engram. So those 2 players now are going to be matchup dependent. And so you're going to want to check out JB Barry's article every week where he talks about CB versus wide receiver matchups and what the guys do. That's on Fantasy Alarm every week now. So check that out. He'll let you know whether it's going to be a Kirk week or a Zay Jones week.
Yeah, and you can keep riding Travis Etienne. It's a good spot for him this week against Houston.
Great spot. The best spot.
Broncos, Dolphins given 6. Jalen Waddle's in concussion protocol. We don't know whether or not he's going to be available for this game. Obviously, still plenty of time for him to go through, but as of today, he was still in the team's concussion protocol, and they said had the game gone to overtime last week, he would not have returned, obviously. Raheem Mostert had that huge touchdown run. He's looked really good through the first couple of weeks, and obviously Tua and Tyreek are on point here. So Dolphins look pretty set. They're at home against Denver. What's your takeaways from the Broncos side of things? Marvin Mims, I had a Marvin Mims rookie auto listed on eBay, Coop. The moment he scored that 80-yard touchdown, I had 6 bids on that card. Immediately, my phone's blowing up. Boom, boom, boom. Marvin Mims hitting the highlights there.
There you go, dude. He's in the same boat as Jalen Waddle. We love what we saw. I mean, he even returned a punt for 45 yards. So
Jalen Hyatt, you mean?
Jalen Hyatt, yeah. Sorry, not Waddle. Jalen, we're talking Dolphins. Yeah. So same spot as Jalen Hyatt. We just need to get more snaps for the guy. He looks explosive, looks awesome. And I've got to say, we ended up behind here on time. Let's rapid fire through these games and just hit on anything that's interesting, and then we can finish it up with some questions.
We'll do our best to get to your questions, guys. We love the interaction. We appreciate all of you hanging in here. We'll do our best to get to these questions here in a moment. We got a couple more games to work.
Let's just rip through the games and say, hey, this is interesting, this is not, and then we'll get to the questions.
Still in on Javonte Williams. I think eventually have a breakout. Could come against the Dolphins. We saw the Chargers run all over Miami. Then we saw the Patriots with no offensive line struggle. I think Denver gets it going here with Williams continuing to see his role increase.
Yep. On the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill unstoppable. Raheem Mostert awesome. Jalen Waddle, he's going to be fine after concussion. Durham Smythe, DFS play, and because he's running literally 97% of the routes, which is wild. They're basically using him like George Kittle. He's not George Kittle though, but if they're going to use him like that, then he's definitely a DFS start throw from time to time.
Yep. Chargers Vikings has the biggest game total on the board at 54.5. It's a -1 spread. They said they want to get Jordan Addison more snaps moving forward. So maybe he finally overtakes KJ Osborne. Has looked really good in the first 2 weeks of the season here. A lot of points are going to be scored. I think everybody's in play. Obviously, the core guys there, but if you're still holding on to Quentin Johnson, Coop, I think he just stays on your bench, right?
Has to, because he's not playing. He needs 2 things to happen. He needs to overcome Josh Palmer in the snap category. He only played 10 snaps this week. Quentin Johnson did. Palmer played like 40. So he needs to overcome Josh Palmer, and then he needs someone to get hurt. So the barrier for Quentin Johnston a lot higher than they are for guys like Zay Flowers or even Jackson Smith and Jigba. So, I mean, in this game, you start Jefferson, you start Hawk, you start Keenan Allen, you start Mike Williams, you start both quarterbacks wherever you have them. And honestly, both running backs, even though they struggled last week, this week I do like them. So I moved both Joshua Kelly and Alexander Madison are much higher in my rankings than they were last week. And this is where you start those guys. If you don't start them this week, then you might never ever start them. But you should probably never start them.
Right. Rex had a comment on the Denver game, said Javonte Williams' his biggest question mark. You still start him every week. And then he asked Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. I'm still going Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's the clear number one wide receiver in that offense. Quick update on the Packers situation. Aaron Jones did not practice today. Christian Watson went through individual drills. So continue to watch that out. Sean wants to know Addison or Flowers.
Flowers.
Yeah, you probably go Flowers this week, but hard not to like Addison in that matchup. It just snap share kind of gives Flowers the lean.
It is a I'm like the 54 point over under that's about as high as they make them, John.
Yeah, listen, if Addison ends up playing more than Osborne, I think Addison's probably in the right spot to do so. But Zay Flowers has been a monster. I just know that Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball 40 times. Yeah, I don't know how many times Lamar's going to throw the football in his spot against the Colts. So,
well, I think if Odell's out, then it makes it a little easier. But
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So if Odell's going to play, then go with Jordan Addison. I mean, you might just go Jordan Addison straight.
I think I am leaning Addison, but
go Addison.
Has obviously been super exciting. And kudos to you for having them both on your team because they're both legitimate, awesome wide receivers and could be trade bait for you. Patriots Jets here with the ugly 36.5 game total. The Jets are getting 3 at home. The story, I guess, here is the Patriots offensive line versus the Jets defense, and then the Patriots tight ends.
Right. The Patriots built this team specifically to face the Jets, right? Like Jeff, if you look at Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, they do not go in the slot. This year, they combined between the two of them, they have one slot snap. DJ Reed followed the guy in motion to the slot one time. That's it. They stay on the outside. So Devontae Parker, even though he played 100% snap share, he is going to be sacrificed to the Lions this week. Like, do not. Devontae Parker is the easiest fade there's probably ever been. But the guys that line up inside, Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki, they might be all right. The thing is, this game is probably going to be bad.
Yeah.
Like the game we just talked about, 54 point over under. This one has a 36 point over under. That is wild disparity. 18 point difference, like crazy, right? 3 different touchdowns. So in this game, you start Hunter Henry where you have to. You start Ramondre, you start Garrett Wilson, and
Rex wants to know is Dalvin Cook falling out of RB2 flex consideration? Or not Dalvin Cook, rather RB2 flex consideration. I mean, this isn't a great spot to run. I know Mostert just had a really big game, but the Patriots had to worry about the passing attack. I think you'll be seeing a lot of heavy fronts here against the Jets because they'll just dare Zach Wilson to beat them in man coverage. So probably not playing Dalvin this week if I don't have to.
No, Dalvin, dude. So the snaps was 3-headed monster. Worst possible situation. Dalvin Cook played 17, and then Dalvin Cook played 17. Brees played 15, and Michael Carter also played 15. I'm just staying away from all those guys. And Tooth Dirk, I see you there. CeeDee Lamb says Sauce who? Well, they took advantage of exactly what we know. CeeDee Lamb played 47 slot snaps last week. They just put him in the slot, and Sauce and DJ don't go in there. So CeeDee Lamb didn't have to get covered by Sauce Gardner. And unless Robert Saleh changes that, every team that plays the Jets should do exactly that. Take your best player, move him in the slot, and challenge this team to put one of their better cornerbacks into the slot. The Bills did it with Diggs. The Cowboys did it with Lamb, and now the Jets are 0-2.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Alexander wants to know, do I trade Fields, Swift, and Gainwell for Ramondre, Baker, and JT? And it's super flex. I don't think so.
Goodness gracious.
I mean, you don't know what. I mean, I guess Jonathan Taylor could come back and not hold out.
That trade is wild.
I mean, Gainwell, you're okay. I'll say this: you're getting 2 running backs not on the same team at least, so
yeah,
you're not going to be able to play Swift and Gainwell together. I think it's I'm not a Baker Mayfield guy, so no. I think you're giving up a lot trading Fields for Baker in that deal, but you are getting at least one running back upgrade. Somebody there is going to be better than Gainwell, and then Swift might be a push, but Gainwell and Swift just might cut into each other, so Stevenson and JT could be better. So
here, this question is probably going to decide it for me, Alexander. Do you have a third quarterback?
True.
Because Baker Mayfield's so low in the rankings that if you have any third quarterback, any starting quarterback, I don't care if it's Bryce Young or Sam Howell or whoever, if you have any other quarterback, I think I actually do the trade.
Yeah, I might pull because again, Swift and Gainwell, when Gainwell's healthy, might just keep
you might have nobody.
You'll have Stevenson and Taylor. We just don't know what Taylor's going to be when he comes back. So
it's going to be awesome. I think I probably take the trade regardless. Now that I think about it, but if you do have a third quarterback, then definitely do it, because then it's like, you know what? Then you have a failsafe if Baker actually just kind of really does suck, but he's been okay.
Right. Javier, I see your question. We'll get to that in a moment here. You send us a big start sit, so we appreciate you subbing. We'll definitely get to you. We got to work our way through some of these games here. About 15 minutes left on the show. Bills, Commanders 6.5. Washington. Brian Robinson's got to be the big takeaway, right? Catching passes, running the ball really well, looking good here. I don't know if that continues against Buffalo, but good to see him the way he's playing right now.
Yeah, Brian Robinson, awesome. And you can, it sucks that Logan Thomas got hurt because he was looking potentially viable. Cole Turner, if Logan Thomas is out, could be a DFS play. And then for the most part, if you need to start Scary Terry or Jahan Dotson, I'm not starting Curtis Samuel anywhere.
Not starting Curtis Samuel anywhere. For Buffalo, James Cook is a full go, guys. Everything we hope for.
Right. Well, except for Latavius Murray getting all those goal line carries. That is the only thing holding him back. That's what makes him a high-end RB2 rather than potentially an RB1.
I think eventually that will change. But
I hope so too. Dalton Kincaid, I just want to mention, we loved his week 1 usage, 47 slot snaps. Even though he got the targets, which was nice, 6 targets, his usage regressed a little bit. He didn't play the whole game, and he also played only like 50% of his snaps from wide receiver, which is still fine, right. But we got to keep an eye on Kincaid. We wanted him to keep going forward, and even though he got the targets, I'd say he kind of stalled. We kept it even rather than this is a big week for him. This is a big week for him. We need to see him progress.
100%. Panthers, Seahawks here again. I like Kenneth Gainwell a lot in this matchup. I'm bullish on pretty much any running back against Carolina at this point here. So I'm willing him to go there. DK Metcalf's apparently dealing with some bruised ribs after the hit he took against Detroit. Thoughts on JSN, Tyler Lockett, and the Seattle situation here?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of already hit on it this show where it's like JSN, if Tyler Lockett misses time or if DK Metcalf misses time, it's wheels up for JSN. Until then, he's still a part-time player, and which doesn't mean that he can't be fantasy relevant, but the way you get a Justin Jefferson or an Odell Beckham Jr. or Mike Evans as rookies or an Amon-Ra St. Brown is they play every snap. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, after 6 weeks or so as a rookie, he did start, his role changed. He did play every snap. That's what we need for JSN. We need them to look at it and say, okay, when it comes to crunch time, this guy's so good that when we go to 2 tight end sets, which this team does all the time, we're going to take Tyler Lockett out. And that day will come, but it might not come this season. It might not come next season. For Chris Godwin, it came in season 3. Right. And the moment that happened, he was the wide receiver 2 in fantasy football overall. And Alexander, we see in the chat, he says Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young.
But he's going to have to add DK Metcalf too. So now he's adding Metcalf into that trade. The giveaway, I don't know.
Don't give away Metcalf too.
Yeah,
dude, the first trade is fine. Like you're trading with Justin Fields
in a league that vetoes.
You're trading Justin Fields in Superflex, right? Yeah. And the thing with vetoes, we don't have time for it, but the only veto trades if there's actual collusion, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen for sure. Let the kids play.
Yep, I'm with you there. All right. Anything else on this matchup?
No.
Okay. Cowboys versus Cardinals here. Not a lot to talk about for Arizona. James Conner, great usage. Your guy, Michael Wilson there playing,
No, so they went 2 wide. They changed it up and they used 2 tight ends and they used those 2 players to tether to the line. So they didn't need the split end as much. Michael Wilson's snap share came down. So right now, if he's the last man on your bench, you might drop him if there's someone you need to add. I'm still stashing him just to see. But yeah, that hurt. He played the most snaps last week, but then this week they went 2 tight ends this week, and they used the little guys. So
okay, Sean wants to know how we feel about Zach Ertz got a lot of work here for Arizona.
Here's the thing with Ertz is that like I had him as a very safe play, but considering he has 18 targets and Marquise Brown is second with 15, and the next highest is Michael Wilson with 7. He's so clearly locked in as a top 2 target on the team that we actually have to consider him as a potential upside play. And he and Hunter Henry, if they do well this week versus tough defenses, now we're looking at these guys and saying, these are just my guys for the rest of the year, and I might only plan for bye weeks. So Zach Ertz is interesting. The one thing you have to think about with Zach Ertz is that there's a very real possibility they're showcasing him for a trade. If you're going to drop DeAndre Hopkins and try and lose on purpose, then maybe you do trade Zach Ertz. Jonathan, I know he played with Jonathan Gannon with the Eagles, and he's probably a big leader on the team, but trading away guys that aren't going to be part of the rebuild is the best possible way, right? Like trade Zach Ertz, trade James Conner, get what you can for these guys now and turn it into assets that are going to be helping you.
Don't be the Los Angeles Angels and keeping Shohei Ohtani, get rid of him. Get in the game. Tommy, want to know stash or trash Quentin Johnson? We said trash until you can't play him. You're just hoping an injury happens, and if not, he's eating a spot on your bench. So
you need 6 or more bench spots to hold a player like that.
Yep. Cowboy side of things, like obviously CeeDee Lamb goated. Tony Pollard looks amazing here. But your tight end situation, you got trolled by fantasy receipts on your Peyton Hendershot tweet.
Dude, Peyton Hendershot got a good carry from the 1 yard line. That tweet wouldn't have. That tweet would have been good, dude. We would have been fine.
So you're in on Ferguson or no?
No, dude, Ferguson through 2 weeks now. In neither game, he ran more than 50% of the routes. He's not even running half the routes. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Until that changes, you can't start this.
People don't care. They just don't want to see starting tight end, and they think he's good to go.
That's all.
Right,
like
Bears
the analysis
teams,
of
we got a
Dalton
games here to go, Coop.
The analysis of Dalton Schultz was good, so Ferguson will be good is mind-bogglingly stupid.
I would agree with you. Whatever happened to the kid they drafted? Everybody's all high on.
He had a touchdown. He caught a touchdown pass this week. You and Schoonmaker did.
Schoonmaker, there we go. Love it.
He caught a touchdown pass.
Great. Bears, Chiefs. Chiefs are giving 12.5, 47.5 game total here. I mean, again, Jordan Love threw for 3 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield looked for completed like 80% of his passes. This feels like it should be a bloodbath to me. Dan Silverdidio, however, on the Better Sports Betting Show yesterday brought up the fact that I guess Patrick Mahomes in games where he's more than a 7-point favorite, the Chiefs don't cover the spread. They just play down to their competition in these situations. I can't believe that's going to be the case here this weekend with the Chiefs being at home and Travis Kelce, getting back in the game last week and now another game under his belt. So I'm a full believer. But now the Chiefs running back situation is the interesting thing. Like if Pacheco doesn't play, you have CEH and you have Jerick McKinnon. Which one would you rather start if you had to sit Pacheco this week?
I'd probably start McKinnon just because I know that he's the better pass catcher, to be honest, and we've seen it before. And I love Dan Silverdidio. He's a boss. He's so good with the capping, but I'm not sure I can go with that one. I think Fox could get in trouble for showing war crimes on TV with this game this week. Like, I think the Chiefs are just going to absolutely obliterate the Bears.
All right, we got a couple more minutes, Coop. We got to run through this. I just put the note in the chat that Alarm Fantasy Football is coming up next. You'll be on that show. Howard Bendel will be on that show, and you guys will answer any carryover questions. So sub to the channel. Watch Alarm Fantasy Football coming up at 2 o'clock here. Sunday Night Football, Steelers Raiders.
Yeah, this should be a close game, honestly. And I think I like the Raiders in this one. I like the Raiders to bounce back and at least run more offensive plays and it could be a get right game for Devontae Adams. Though the Steelers defense was so good this week, the Raiders just have a tough schedule to start this year. But I'm still starting Devontae Adams. I'm still starting Josh Jacobs, and that's about it until Jacoby Myers gets back. I'm not sure.
Why are they not using Michael Mayer?
Split. I mean, and Austin Hooper's running more routes. Like, so neither one is. This team just doesn't have a fantasy relevant tight end.
Now, how do you take one of the more athletic pass catching college tight end? Kincaid and Laporte are making plays. Why would you not be trying to do the same thing out of Mayer, who's supposed to be better than them both coming out of school?
Teams do this when they take a tight end that isn't a pure pass catching tight end. It's almost like with Dallas Goedert, they force them to start as like the inline blocking tight end. It's like a veteran thing. Like it happens all the time. I watched Cole Kmet sit behind the ghost of Jimmy Graham. You know what I mean? Like it happens. It's just the way it goes.
Eagles Buccaneers here. Again, we got to wait on the Gainwell news for the running back situation. Obviously, if Gainwell's out, you play Swift. If Gainwell's in, you probably still play Swift and Gainwell, but they're flex plays because we just don't know the split there. For the Buccaneers, you play White, you play Evans, you play Baker, probably. Like you just play the offense because right now they're producing, and the Eagles defense has been susceptible. I know they have the good name talent, but they're not performing at that level. So I'll keep playing all Buccaneers here.
If James Bradbury is out, then Chris Godwin needs to be your showdown slate captain, I think.
Sure. No arguments. And then Rams Bengals closed it out here. We don't know the status of Joe Burrow.
Yes, I mean, I kind of just want to put money on. If you can find someone that hasn't pulled the lines down, just put some money on the Rams just in case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can always hedge back, but if you can
Who's
get
to
it,
say the Rams can't outright win this game anyways with the way they've been playing?
that's what I'm saying, dude. And Jake Browning is going to be the quarterback. Or I guess they added Will Greer to the practice squad,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I mean, but the thing is, you still got to start Chase. The question is, do you start T Higgins with Jake Browning, John?
No.
That's what I'm saying. If you have any better option that's playing on Sunday, just put him in. If it's even close, get him in there. Puka Nacua, you start everywhere because he's awesome and will probably continue to be.
You play Kyron Williams where you can. So.
And you play Kyron Williams. And then don't start Higbee. Don't start anybody else.
Yep. All right, guys, that's the show here today. Again, Alarm Fantasy Football is coming up next. So if you're tuning into us, stay with the Fantasy Alarm YouTube and Twitch channels. Tune into Alarm Fantasy Football. You'll see Coop again. You'll see Howard Bender. Just ask your questions over there. They will be more than happy to answer your questions. It's all day football pretty much here on the Alarm Sports Network. And then tomorrow, 7 o'clock Eastern time, again, come back, Coop and I, getting you ready for Thursday Night Football with our Thursday Night Football game preview, start, sit, DFS showdown questions. So like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Plus, go to fantasyalarm.com/win or scan the QR code here on the screen. 7-day free trial awaits you. Become a member of the Fantasy Alarm family. Get access to everything we have on site, including our DFS premium content, lineup generator, rostership projections, and our premium Discord access for 7 days free when you scan the QR code or go to fantasyalarm.com/win. That's Coop and I here for this week. Good luck, everybody. We'll catch you all later.
Let's go.